The coffee maker was gone when I woke up Tuesday morning. Not broken, not unplugged. Gone, like it had never existed at all. I stood in my kitchen in boxers and a wrinkled t-shirt, staring at the empty counter where my 10-cup Cuisart had lived for 3 years. The outlet was still there, mocking me with its unused holes. The coffee filters sat in their little basket holder, orphaned and pointless. "Callie," I called out, but got silence in return. Her car was already gone from the driveway, again. This was day 11 of what I'd started calling the deep freeze. 11 days since my wife of 6 years had spoken more than 10 words to me. 11 days of sleeping alone in our king-sized bed while she camped out in the guest room. 11 days of eating dinner by myself while she worked late, went to the gym, had drinks with the girls, visited her sister, anything to avoid being in the same room as me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Jamie Forsythe, but everyone calls me Jay. 38 years old, former Army communications specialist, current IT director for a mid-sized insurance company in Hartford. I fix things for a living. Servers, networks, problems. But apparently I couldn't fix whatever was broken between me and my wife. The weird thing was, I didn't even know what I'd done wrong. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through our text messages. The last real conversation we'd had was almost 2 weeks ago about dinner plans. Since then, it was just logistics. Working late, don't wait up. Taking car to shop tomorrow. I made instant coffee with hot tap water and tried to remember the exact moment everything went sideways. Had I forgotten an anniversary? Said something stupid at her company party? Left the toilet seat up one too many times? My phone buzzed. A text from Kaylee. "Gone all day. Don't wait up." It was 7:30 in the morning. I was getting dressed when I heard voices from next door. Mrs. Daly was in her backyard talking to someone over the fence. The old woman had lived in our neighborhood for 40 years and knew everyone's business better than they did. "Such a shame," she was saying. "They used to be such a nice couple." I froze one leg in my khakis. "Well, you know how these things go," another voice replied. I didn't recognize it. Men never see it coming. Poor Jamie. He has no idea what's happening right under his nose. My blood went cold. I crept to the bedroom window and peered through the blinds. Mrs. Daly was talking to a woman I'd never seen before, probably in her 50s, holding a small white dog. "The wife's been meeting with lawyers," Mrs. Daly continued. "I saw her coming out of Brennan and Associates last week. That's a divorce firm, you know." The woman with the dog nodded knowingly. "And I suppose he's just going about his business like nothing's wrong." Completely clueless. She's got him right where she wants him. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering. Divorce lawyers? Jesus Christ. But why? What had I done that was so terrible it warranted sneaking around behind my back, consulting attorneys, giving me the silent treatment for almost 2 weeks? I finished getting dressed in a daze and headed to work, my mind racing. During my lunch break, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Callie's social media accounts. Her Instagram was the usual stuff. Gym selfies, pictures of fancy brunches with her girlfriends, motivational quotes about knowing your worth and not settling for less. But the comment section was where things got interesting. Under a photo of her and her 3 closest friends at some upscale restaurant, I found a thread that made my stomach drop. "Heather Parr, you look amazing, babe." Glowing Marcy Fitness. When you know, you know. Vera Vegas. Some people don't deserve you, hun. Period. Callie HR. Thanks, girls. Big changes coming soon. Big changes. Divorce lawyers. The silent treatment. I was starting to get the picture. That evening, I tried to talk to her. She came home around 9 carrying takeout from that Thai place she liked. I was watching TV in the living room, waiting. "Hey, I said when she walked in. "Can we talk?" She looked right through me like I was made of glass, walked straight to the kitchen, got a fork, and took her food upstairs to the guest room. I heard the door close and the lock click. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank TV screen, trying to figure out what kind of man I'd become, that my own wife couldn't stand to be in the same room with me. The answer came the next morning in the most humiliating way possible. I was running late for work and couldn't find my car keys anywhere. I checked all the usual spots: kitchen counter, coffee table, coat pockets, nothing. I was about to call an Uber when I remembered I'd left my laptop bag in Callie's car the night before. Her Lexus was unlocked in the garage. I grabbed my bag from the back seat and was about to leave when I noticed her phone sitting in the cup holder. The screen was lit up with notifications. I shouldn't have looked, I know that. But after 2 weeks of being treated like I had the plague, I was desperate for answers. The phone wasn't locked. She'd never been paranoid about that kind of thing. The notifications were from a group chat called Brunch Squad. Callie, Heather, Marcy, and Vera. I opened it. What I found there changed everything. The conversation was from 3 days ago. Heather, so how's the Invisible Man experiment going? Callie, OMG, it's working so well. He's like a lost puppy. Marcy, I still can't believe you're actually doing this. Vera, remind me what the point is again? Heather, it's simple psychology. You treat someone like they're invisible for long enough, they start to believe it. Makes them easier to control. Callie, exactly. By the time I'm ready to file, he'll be so grateful for any attention, he'll sign whatever I put in front of him. Marcy, diabolical. I love it. Heather, my divorce attorney swears by it, says it's way more effective than fighting. Just freeze them out completely. No explanations, no arguments, nothing. They break down mentally and stop thinking clearly. Callie, it's only been 2 weeks and he's already falling apart. This morning he made coffee with tap water because I hid the coffee maker. Vera, you hid the coffee maker. Callie in the basement storage room along with half his clothes and that stupid tool set he loves. I'm disappearing his stuff piece by piece. Gaslighting 101. Heather, brilliance. By the time you serve him papers, he'll think he's losing his mind. Marcy, how much longer are you going to keep it up, Callie? Another week or 2. Then I'll hit him with the divorce papers and a soba story about how we've grown apart and I need space to find myself. He'll be so broken down he'll agree to anything just to make it stop. Heather, and you get the house, the cars, half his 401k, Callie. All of it. He won't even fight me. Trust me, I know my husband. He's weak. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. They wanted to make me invisible. They thought I was weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I took screenshots of the entire conversation and sent them to my own phone. Then I put Callie's phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked calmly into the house. In the basement, I found my coffee maker, 3 boxes of my clothes, and my toolbox, all hidden behind some old Christmas decorations. I left everything exactly where it was. If Callie wanted to play games, I was happy to oblige. But she was about to learn that making someone invisible is a dangerous thing to do. Because invisible people can go anywhere, do anything, and nobody sees them coming. I called in sick to work and spent the day planning. Not the emotional, half-assed kind of planning that most people do when their world falls apart. Military planning, methodical, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. First, I drove to the bank and opened a new account at a different institution. Then I transferred exactly half of our joint savings, my legal right as a joint account holder. I left enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for 2 months because I'm not a complete bastard, but the rest was coming with me. Next stop was a lawyer's office. Not one of the fancy downtown firms Callie would use, but a scrappy solo practitioner named Rebecca Santos, who specialized in men's divorce rights. I'd found her online and liked her tagline, "When she takes the gloves off, we take them off too." Rebecca was a small, intense woman in her 40s with prematurely gray hair and the kind of handshake that could crack walnuts. I showed her the screenshots from Callie's phone. "Holy shit," she said, scrolling through them. "Sorry, actually, no, I don't apologize. This is some next-level psychological manipulation. Your wife and her friends are basically conspiring to commit emotional abuse. Is it illegal? Not technically, but it's going to make our divorce proceedings very interesting." She looked up at me with something like admiration. Most men would have confronted their wives immediately after finding this. You came to see a lawyer first. Smart. I spent 8 years in the Army. You don't react. You respond. Good, because we're going to respond in a way that will make your wife's head spin. But first, I need to ask, do you want to save this marriage? I thought about Callie laughing with her friends about my tap water coffee, about her calling me weak, about 2 weeks of sleeping alone while she played psychological games with my head. "No," I said, "I want to end it completely." Rebecca smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then let's talk strategy." We spent 2 hours going over Connecticut divorce law, asset division, and what Rebecca called the nuclear option, using Callie's own psychological manipulation against her. The beauty of this, Rebecca explained, is that she's documented her own misconduct. These text messages prove premeditation, conspiracy, and emotional abuse. Any judge who sees this is going to be very unsympathetic to her claims. What about the house, joint ownership? But if we can prove she was trying to defraud you out of your fair share through psychological manipulation, we might be able to argue for more than 50%. She leaned back in her chair. "How attached are you to the place?" "Not at all. I never liked it anyway. Too big, too expensive, too much like something she wanted to show off to her friends." "Even better. We can use that." I left Rebecca's office with a retainer agreement and a plan that made me smile for the first time in 2 weeks. Phase 1 would begin immediately. That afternoon, I drove to a storage facility across town and rented a unit. Then I went home and began the most satisfying packing job of my life. I didn't take everything. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I took the things that mattered to me and would hurt her the most to lose. My tools, obviously, my books, the good coffee maker from the basement, plus the expensive espresso machine she'd bought for the kitchen, my clothes, but also the throw pillows. She was always fussing with the living room rug she'd spent 3 weeks picking out, one of the matching nightstands from our bedroom. I left notes in some of the empty spaces where the coffee maker had been. Invisible people don't drink coffee where my dresser used to stand. Gone, but not forgotten, on her pillow. Sweet dreams. But the masterpiece was in the garage. Callie drove a white Lexus SUV that she treated like a beloved pet. She washed it every weekend, parked it in the exact center of the garage, and had a fit if anyone so much as breathed on it. I didn't damage it. That would have been illegal and stupid. Instead, I rearranged the entire garage so that her precious car was blocked in by lawnmowers, bicycles, and storage boxes. Not impossible to move, but annoying as hell. On the windshield, I left a note. Invisible parking job. Then I packed my truck and drove to my new apartment. I'd found the place online that morning, a loft in a converted warehouse downtown. All exposed brick and industrial fixtures. The kind of place Callie would have hated. Too masculine, too urban, not suburban. Perfect enough for her image. It was exactly what I wanted. I spent the evening setting up my new life. Bed, desk, coffee maker, TV. I ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor looking out at the city lights. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed around 1000 p.m. A text from Callie. "What the hell did you do to the garage?" I didn't respond. Invisible people don't text back. 20 minutes later. Jamie, this isn't funny. I can't get my car out. Nothing then. I know you're getting these. Answer me. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, I drove past the house on my way to work. Callie's car was in the driveway, parked crooked like she'd been in a hurry. The garage door was open, and I could see the chaos inside where she'd obviously moved everything around trying to get her car out. At work, I cleaned out my desk and submitted my resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice, professional and courteous. My boss, Dave, was shocked. You're one of our best people, Jay. What's this about? Money. We can talk about a raise. Personal reasons, I said. I need a change. This is awfully sudden. Is everything okay at home? I almost laughed. Everything's fine, Dave. Better than fine, actually. That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be soon. I'd already lined up a new job through a former Army buddy who ran an IT consulting firm. Better pay, more flexibility, and best of all, it would let me work from anywhere, including my new loft apartment that Callie didn't know about. My phone had been buzzing all morning with increasingly frantic texts from my wife. I finally turned it on during lunch to read them. Where are you? Your office said you resigned. What the hell is going on, Jamie? You're scaring me. Please call. This isn't like you. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I'm calling your mother. That last one made me laugh out loud. My mother lived in Florida and barely tolerated Callie. Good luck with that conversation. But the best text came around 2 p.m. I went by the bank. They said, "You closed our savings account. That's our money, Jamie. You can't just steal it." I typed back, "Not stealing, splitting. Invisible people need money too." Her response was immediate. "What do you mean, invisible people? You're not making sense. Ask your brunch squad, they'll explain it." Then I blocked her number. By 5 p.m. I was getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize, Callie trying to reach me through different phones. I let them all go to voicemail. That evening, I went to Murphy's, a dive bar near my new apartment. The kind of place with sticky floors, cheap beer, and a bartender who minded her own business. I was nursing my second Budweiser when a woman slid onto the stool next to me. "You look like a man with a story," she said. Her name was Janine, mid-30s, auburn hair, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. She managed the bar and had the kind of direct gaze that suggested she didn't put up with anyone's. "What makes you say that?" I asked. Most guys who drink alone on a Thursday night are either celebrating or commiserating. You don't look like you're celebrating, but you don't look miserable either. That usually means you're plotting something. I laughed. Is it that obvious, honey? I've been tending bar for 15 years. I can read people like a book. She poured herself a whiskey and sat down across from me. "So, what's the story? Divorce? Getting there? Wife cheat on you? Worse? She tried to make me disappear." Janine raised an eyebrow. "Come again?" I found myself telling her the whole story. The silent treatment, the hidden coffee maker, the group chat full of psychological manipulation tactics. Janine listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Jesus Christ," she said when I finished. "That's some serious territory. What kind of person does that to someone they supposedly love?" "The kind who thinks her husband is weak and stupid." "And is he?" I met her eyes. "Not even a little bit." Janine smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile that reminded me of my lawyer's expression. "I like you already." "So, what's the plan?" Phase 1 is complete. I've gone ghost. New apartment, new job, new bank account. She has no idea where I am or how to reach me. And Phase 2? That's where things get interesting. I told her about the divorce papers Rebecca was preparing, the evidence we had of Callie's manipulation, and the nuclear option we were considering. "Damn," Janine said. "Remind me never to piss you off." Only people who try to make me invisible need to worry about that. We talked until closing time. Janine was smart, funny, and had zero patience for the kind of games Callie liked to play. When she locked up the bar, she walked me to my truck. "You know," she said, "if you need someone to help you stay visible, I'm around most nights." I might take you up on that. I hope you do. And Jay, yeah, when you finally drop the hammer on your wife, I want to hear all about it. I drove home, thinking about visibility and invisibility, about the difference between disappearing and vanishing. Callie thought she could make me fade away, become a non-person she could manipulate and control. Instead, she'd created a ghost, and ghosts, as she was about to learn, can walk through walls, see everything, and strike when you least expect it. Phase 2 was about to begin. The divorce papers arrived at Callie's office on a Friday afternoon, delivered by a professional process server who made sure half her coworkers saw the exchange. Rebecca had timed it perfectly. Maximum embarrassment, minimum opportunity for Callie to spin the narrative. I know this because Heather posted about it on Instagram within an hour. When your girl needs emergency margaritas and a shoulder to cry on, be your friends first. Divorce is hard. The photo showed 4 women at a high-end Mexican restaurant downtown. Callie in the center, with red-rimmed eyes and a frozen margarita the size of a fishbowl. Her 3 friends clustered around her like bodyguards, all fierce expressions and supportive poses. The comment section was pure gold. "OMG, what happened?" "You're better off without him, hun." "His loss." "You're a queen." But the comment that made me laugh out loud came from someone named Jennifer Realtor. "Didn't see this coming. You guys seem so happy at the Christmas party." Callie's response: "Sometimes you don't really know someone until they show you who they are." I screenshot the whole thread and sent it to Rebecca with a message. Evidence of her spinning the narrative might be useful later. Her reply was immediate. "Already on it. My investigator is monitoring all their social media accounts. Keep being a ghost. It's driving them crazy." She wasn't wrong. Over the weekend, I got a barrage of calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Callie's friends, her sister, even her mother, all trying to reach me on her behalf. I let every single call go to voicemail. The messages were predictable. "Jay, this is Heather. Callie is really worried about you. Can you please call her back?" "Jamie, it's Susan, Callie's sister. I don't know what's going on between you two, but this isn't the way to handle it. Be a man and talk to your wife." "This is Patricia Brennan, Callie's mother. I always knew you weren't good enough for my daughter, but I didn't think you were cruel. Prove me wrong and call her back." I deleted them all without responding. Monday morning, I started my new job. The consulting firm was everything my old corporate gig wasn't. Fast-paced, challenging, and full of people who actually knew what they were doing. My first assignment was helping a manufacturing company upgrade their entire network infrastructure. Complex, high stakes, and exactly the kind of problem I loved solving. I was deep in server configurations when my phone rang. Unknown number, but this time I recognized the area code. Hartford. Probably another flying monkey from Callie's circle. I answered with my most professional voice. "Jamie Forsythe Consulting." Jamie Forsythe Consulting. The voice was male, unfamiliar, and slightly amused. That's new. Who is this? Trent Wallace. I think we need to talk. I knew that name. Trent Wallace. Real estate developer, CrossFit enthusiast, and, according to Mrs. Daly's neighborhood gossip network, the reason the Hendersons had gotten divorced last year. "I don't think we do," I said. "Actually, we do. It's about Callie." The line went quiet. I could hear traffic in the background like he was calling from his car. "What about her?" I asked. "Look, this is awkward, but she's been reaching out a lot, and I think there might be some misunderstanding about my relationship with your wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife. And I don't think there's any misunderstanding at all." Trent cleared his throat. "Right. Well, the thing is, Callie seems to think we have something going on, and we don't. I mean, we've talked a few times at the gym, maybe grabbed coffee once or twice, but that's it. I'm not interested in getting involved in someone else's divorce. I almost admired his attempted damage control. Almost. Trent, let me ask you something. Do you think I'm stupid? What? No, Because the only reason you'd be calling me right now is if Callie told you I found out about your little coffee dates, and you're trying to get ahead of the story. Which means you think I'm stupid enough to believe that you and my wife are just gym buddies. Silence. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop taking Callie's calls. You're going to stop meeting her for coffee. And you're going to stay the hell away from my divorce, because if you don't, I'm going to make your life very complicated. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. There's a difference. I hung up and immediately called Rebecca. Your wife has a boyfriend, I told her. I was wondering when that shoe would drop. Tell me everything. I relayed the conversation with Trent. Rebecca listened without interrupting, but I could hear her typing notes. This is perfect, she said when I finished. Adultery isn't grounds for divorce in Connecticut anymore, but it absolutely affects asset division and alimony. If we can prove she was cheating during the marriage, it strengthens our position significantly. How do we prove it? Leave that to me. I have a very good investigator. That evening, I met Janine at Murphy's. She was working, but the bar was slow, so we could talk between customers. I told her about Trent's call and Rebecca's reaction. So, your wife is cheating, and her boyfriend is trying to distance himself, Janine said, wiping down glasses. Classic. The timing is interesting, though. She starts the invisible treatment 2 weeks ago, but she's been seeing this guy for longer than that. Makes me wonder if the psychological manipulation was always about setting up the divorce in her favor. You think she planned this whole thing? I think my wife is a lot more calculating than I gave her credit for. A customer at the other end of the bar signaled for another beer. Janine served him and came back to our conversation. So, what's your next move? I'm going to stay invisible a little longer. Let her and her friends think they're winning while Rebecca's investigator does his thing. Then, when we have everything we need, you drop the hammer. Exactly. I like the way you think. Janine leaned across the bar, close enough that I could smell her perfume. You know, if you want to really mess with her head, you could always make yourself visible in the right places. Let her see you moving on. What do you mean? I mean, show up somewhere you know she'll be, with someone who's clearly not devastated by the divorce. She smiled. Someone who makes it obvious that you're doing just fine without her. The idea had merit. Callie's whole strategy depended on me being broken down and desperate. If she saw that I was not only surviving, but thriving, it would undermine everything she thought she knew about me. Where would you suggest? There's a wine bar downtown called Vintage. Very trendy, very see and be seen. Her type of place. I bet if you checked her Instagram, you'd find pictures of her there with her friends. I pulled up Callie's Instagram and scrolled back through her recent posts. Sure enough, there were multiple photos from Vintage over the past few months. Her and the brunch squad, raising wine glasses and making duck faces at the camera. Saturday night? I asked. Saturday night, Janine agreed. But we're not going to sneak around or hide in the corner. We're going to walk in like we own the place and have the best damn time of our lives. What if she causes a scene? Honey, I've been dealing with drunk women for 15 years. Trust me, I can handle your wife. Saturday night, I put on my best shirt and picked up Janine at her apartment. She looked incredible. Black dress, heels, hair done up in a way that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. Damn, I said when she opened the door. You clean up pretty nice yourself. She grabbed her purse and a leather jacket. Ready to make your wife's head explode? Vintage was exactly the kind of place I'd expected. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting, and wine prices that could fund a small country's defense budget. The hostess seated us at a table with a perfect view of the entire restaurant. We ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week, and settled in to wait. Janine was good company, funny and smart, and completely comfortable in her own skin. We talked about everything except my divorce, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Callie arrived at 9:30 with her usual entourage. Heather, Marcy, and Vera, all dressed to kill and ready for a girls' night out. They got a table across the room, but I could see them clearly. "That's them," I told Janine. "The blonde in the red dress is your wife." "That's her. Janine studied Callie with the analytical gaze of a bartender sizing up a potential problem customer. "She's pretty, I'll give her that, but she looks high maintenance as hell." "You have no idea." It took about 10 minutes for Callie to notice me. I saw the exact moment it happened. She was laughing at something Heather said, scanning the room with that casual social awareness all popular girls develop when her gaze landed on our table. Her face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, anger, and something that might have been hurt. She said something to her friends, and all 4 heads turned in our direction. "Showtime," Janine murmured. She reached across the table and took my hand, leaning forward like I'd just said something incredibly charming. I played along, laughing and looking into her eyes like she was the only person in the room. From my peripheral vision, I could see Callie's table buzzing with activity. Phones coming out, probably texting each other, even though they were sitting right there. Classic behavior for women who'd never learned to handle conflict directly. "She's staring," Janine said without looking over. "Let her stare." We ordered dinner and another bottle of wine. Janine was a natural performer, touching my arm when she laughed, leaning in close when she talked, playing the role of a woman who was completely smitten. But the weird thing was, it didn't feel like an act. We had genuine chemistry, genuine connection. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wondered if there might be something real here. Around 10:30, Callie got up and walked toward the restroom. Her path took her right past our table. "Hello, Jamie," she said, stopping beside my chair. I looked up like I had just noticed her. "Oh, hi, Callie. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" Janine extended her hand before I could answer. "I'm Janine. You must be the ex-wife." The word ex hit Callie like a physical blow. "We're not divorced yet." "Details," Janine said with a smile that could cut glass. Callie's composure cracked slightly. "Jamie, can I talk to you privately?" "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. "My lawyer advised me not to have any contact with you outside of official channels." "Your lawyer?" Her voice was getting higher, attracting attention from nearby tables. "Hi, mate, this is ridiculous. We need to talk about what's happening between us." "Nothing's happening between us. That's kind of the point." "You can't just disappear like this. You can't just abandon everything we built together." The irony was so thick, I could have spread it on toast. Abandon? That's interesting word choice coming from someone who spent 2 weeks pretending I didn't exist. Callie's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "Ask your brunch squad. I'm sure they'll explain it." She looked back at her table where Heather, Marcy, and Vera were watching the whole scene with barely concealed panic. Something passed between them, some kind of silent communication that confirmed everything I'd suspected. "We need to talk," Callie said again, but her voice had lost its edge. Now she just sounded desperate. "No, we don't. We need to get divorced. Everything else is just noise." I turned back to Janine, effectively dismissing my wife. Callie stood there for another few seconds, then walked quickly toward the restroom. "Brutal," Janine said. "I almost feel sorry for her." "Don't. She made her choice when she decided to play psychological games with my head." Callie's friends left shortly after that, probably to comfort her in the bathroom or plan their next move. Janine and I finished our dinner in peace, talking and laughing like we'd known each other for years instead of days. When we left the restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in months. The invisible man was becoming visible again, but on his own terms. And judging by the look on Callie's face, she was finally starting to understand that she'd picked a fight with the wrong person. Phase 3 was about to begin. Rebecca's investigator was worth every penny I was paying him. His name was Mike Chen, a former cop who specialized in divorce cases, and he had a talent for finding dirt that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. "Your wife and Mr. Wallace have been very careless," he told me during our Monday morning meeting. "Hotel receipts, restaurant charges on credit cards, even a weekend trip to the Berkshires last month that she told you was a girls' spa retreat." He slid a manila folder across Rebecca's desk. Inside were photos, receipts, and a detailed timeline that painted a very clear picture of my wife's extracurricular activities. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "At least 4 months, possibly longer. But here's the interesting part." Mike pulled out a bank statement. "She's been paying for everything. Hotels, dinners, even some expensive gifts." Either Mr. Wallace is broke, or he's smart enough not to leave a paper trail on his own accounts. Rebecca studied the documents with the focused intensity of a surgeon. "This is better than I hoped. Not only can we prove adultery, but we can show that she was using marital assets to fund the affair. That's going to make the judge very unhappy." "What about the psychological manipulation angle?" "Oh, we're absolutely using that, too." Between the text messages and this evidence of premeditated adultery, we can paint a picture of someone who was systematically planning to defraud you out of your fair share of the marital assets. Rebecca looked up from the papers. "How do you feel about playing hardball?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we could probably settle this quietly and get you a decent deal. Or we can go nuclear and make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person your wife is. The choice is yours." I thought about 2 weeks of sleeping alone while Kaylee played mind games with my head, about her friends laughing at my tap water coffee, about her calling me weak. Nuclear. I said the first bomb dropped Tuesday morning at Callie's office. Rebecca had her process server deliver a subpoena for all of Callie's financial records, along with a formal notice that we were seeking full asset disclosure due to suspected marital misconduct. The second bomb dropped that afternoon when Mike Chen showed up at Trent Wallace's real estate office with a similar subpoena. I know this because Trent called me 20 minutes later, absolutely furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted into the phone. "Protecting my interest in the divorce. It's called discovery. You can't drag me into this. I'm not part of your marriage." "Actually, you kind of are. Especially since you've been sleeping with my wife for the past 4 months. "Silence." "Look," Trent said, his voice dropping to a more reasonable level. "Maybe we got carried away a few times, but it's not what you think. Callie was unhappy. She needed someone to talk to. Save it for the deposition." "Deposition? Oh, didn't I mention my lawyer wants to ask you some questions under oath? You know, about those hotel receipts and that romantic weekend in the Berkshires that my wife paid for with our joint credit card?" More silence. "This is insane," Trent finally said. "You're destroying people's lives over a marriage that was already over." "My marriage was over the day my wife decided to treat me like I was invisible. Everything else is just consequences." I hung up and immediately got a text from Janine. "Drinks tonight. I want to hear about your day." Murphy's was busy for a Tuesday, but Janine had saved me a seat at the end of the bar where we could talk privately. I filled her in on the subpoenas and Trent's panicked phone call. "He's scared," she said, pouring me a beer. "Good. Scared people make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind where they throw other people under the bus to save themselves. I bet within a week he's telling your lawyer everything he knows about your wife's plans." She wasn't wrong. Thursday morning, Rebecca called with an update that made my day. Mr. Wallace's attorney contacted us. She said he wants to cooperate fully with our investigation in exchange for being dropped from the case. What does that mean? It means he's willing to testify about his relationship with your wife, including some very interesting conversations they had about divorce strategy. What kind of conversations? The kind where she explicitly told him she was manipulating you psychologically to make you more compliant during divorce proceedings. Apparently, she bragged about it. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. So, he's willing to throw her under the bus completely. He's also providing us with copies of text messages between them that are illuminating. How illuminating? Let me read you one. Jamie is such a pushover. By the time I'm done with him, he'll sign anything just to make the pain stop. Then we can be together without all this sneaking around. Jesus. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. There's another one where she talks about hiding your belongings to make you think you're losing your mind, and one where she discusses timing the divorce filing for maximum financial advantage. I was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. So, she was planning this whole thing for months. The invisible treatment, the affair, the psychological manipulation. It was all part of a calculated strategy to maximize her settlement and minimize yours. And now we can prove it. Oh, we can more than prove it. We can destroy her. That evening, I was having dinner with Janine at a restaurant near her apartment when my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. After the 5th call in 10 minutes, I finally answered. Jamie? The voice was female, unfamiliar, and slightly slurred. This is Marcy. Marcy from Callie's, you know, her friend group. What do you want, Marcy? I need to talk to you about Callie. About everything. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I'm at Murphy's right now. Can you come down? It's important. Janine raised an eyebrow. That's my bar, she mouthed. I'll be right there, I told Marcy. Murphy's was crowded for a Thursday night, but I spotted Marcy immediately. She was sitting alone at a corner table, nursing what looked like her 4th or 5th martini. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying. Jamie. She waved me over with the exaggerated enthusiasm of someone who was very drunk. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I sat down across from her. What's this about, Marcy? It's about Callie and Heather and this whole mess. She took another sip of her martini. I can't do this anymore. I can't be part of it. Part of what? The lying, the scheming, the cruelty. She looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. Do you know what Heather said when she found out about the subpoenas? She said it was your fault for not being man enough to handle your wife cheating on you. Heather said that she said a lot of things about you, about the divorce, about how Callie deserves everything she can get because you were a shitty husband. Anyway, Marcy's voice was getting louder, attracting attention from nearby tables. But that's not true, is it? You weren't a shitty husband. I don't know. Maybe I was. No. She leaned forward, gripping her glass so tightly her knuckles were white. I've watched you two together for years. You were good to her. You supported her career. You put up with her friends. You even pretended to like her horrible mother. And how did she repay you? By playing sick psychological games. I glanced toward the bar and caught Janine's eye. She was watching our conversation with professional interest, ready to intervene if Marcy got too loud or emotional. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I feel guilty. Because I was part of it. Tears started running down her cheeks. The invisible thing was Heather's idea, but we all went along with it. We thought it was funny. We thought you deserved it for, I don't even remember what we thought you deserved it for, Marcy. And now Callie's talking about taking you for everything you're worth. And Heather's helping her find ways to hide assets. And Vera's coaching her on what to say to make you look like an abusive husband. She wiped her nose with a cocktail napkin. It's not right. None of this is right. I felt like I was watching a dam burst. What do you mean, and hide assets? Callie's been moving money around, transferring it to accounts Heather set up, buying expensive jewelry and hiding it at her mother's house, even prepaying for things like car insurance and gym memberships so the money doesn't show up in the divorce proceedings. That's fraud. I know, and I told her that, but she said you'd never figure it out because you're too trusting and too stupid. Marcy looked up at me with something like desperation. But you're not stupid, are you?
You figured out about the invisible game.
You figured out about Trent. You're going to figure out about the money, too, probably. What happens to us when you do? To me, I mean. I didn't want to be part of this, but I went along with it anyway. Does that make me just as guilty? I studied her face, the smeared makeup, the bloodshot eyes, the genuine remorse. She looked like someone who'd finally realized she'd been swimming with sharks. That depends, I said. Are you willing to tell the truth about what you know? You mean testify against Callie and Heather, if it comes to that? Marcy was quiet for a long moment, staring into her martini like it held the answers to life's great questions. Finally, she looked up at me. They're going to destroy me if I turn on them. They're going to destroy themselves. The question is whether you want to go down with the ship. She nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything you know about Callie's plans, Heather's involvement, and where they've been hiding money. And Marcy. Yeah, don't leave anything out. By the time she finished talking, I had 2 hours of recorded testimony that would make Rebecca's day and probably end several friendships permanently. But as I walked Marcy to her Uber and watched her disappear into the night, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not for Callie or Heather, who had orchestrated this whole mess, but for the collateral damage. People like Marcy, who had gone along with something cruel because it seemed easier than standing up to their friends. The invisible man was becoming visible again, and the view from the surface was uglier than I'd imagined. Rebecca's office felt like a war room on Friday morning. The conference table was covered with documents, bank statements, photographs, and transcripts. Mike Chen had outdone himself with the financial investigation, uncovering a paper trail of hidden assets that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Your wife has been busy, Rebecca said, spreading out bank statements like a poker player revealing a winning hand. 3 separate accounts we didn't know about, all funded with transfers from your joint accounts over the past 6 months. How much? $47,000 plus jewelry, prepaid expenses, and what appears to be a very expensive watch she bought for Mr. Wallace. Mike Chen pulled out a photograph of a Rolex Submariner. $12,000 purchased with a cashier's check from your joint savings account. She bought her boyfriend a $12,000 watch with our money. Gets better, Rebecca said. We also found evidence that she's been working with Heather to set up shell accounts for hiding assets. Heather's PR firm has been invoicing your wife for consulting services that never actually happened. I stared at the documents, feeling a familiar cold anger settle in my chest. How much consulting? $23,000 so far, all paid from marital accounts. All for services that Heather admits were fictional when pressed under oath. You deposed Heather yesterday. She lawyered up fast, but her attorney advised her to cooperate rather than face fraud charges. Turns out, she's not as loyal to your wife as she pretended to be. Mike Chen opened another folder. But the real prize is this: text messages between your wife and Heather discussing the timeline for asset concealment. They were planning to file for divorce in another month after they'd finished moving money around. What changed their mind? You did. When you disappeared and filed first, it threw off their entire strategy. They're scrambling now, trying to hide evidence and coordinate their stories. Rebecca leaned back in her chair with the satisfied expression of a predator who'd cornered her prey. Jaime, I've been doing divorce law for 15 years, and I've never seen a case this clear-cut. Your wife and her friends committed multiple felonies in pursuit of defrauding you. We don't just have grounds for divorce. We have grounds for criminal charges. What are you recommending? Full nuclear option. We file for sanctions, demand return of all hidden assets, and seek attorney's fees. We also recommend that the district attorney's office review the case for possible fraud charges against your wife and Heather. What about Trent? He's cooperating fully, providing testimony, financial records, even text messages where your wife explicitly discusses her manipulation strategy. In exchange, we're not pursuing him for criminal conspiracy.
I thought about Callie's face at the wine bar.
The shock and confusion when she realized I wasn't the broken man she'd expected to find. How long before this goes to court? 2 weeks. Judge Martinez is known for taking a dim view of asset concealment and psychological manipulation. If we present this evidence properly, your wife is going to get destroyed. That afternoon, I met Janine for lunch at a cafe near her apartment. She was working the evening shift at Murphy's, so we had the whole afternoon together. I filled her in on the morning's revelations. Jesus, she said, picking at her salad. Your wife really went all out on the evil scheme front. The crazy thing is, if she'd just asked for a divorce like a normal person, she probably would have gotten half of everything anyway. Connecticut is a no-fault state. But by trying to manipulate me and hide assets, she's going to end up with almost nothing. Greed makes people stupid. So does underestimating your opponent. Janine reached across the table and took my hand. How are you feeling about all this? I mean, really feeling, not just the legal strategy part. It was a good question. I'd been so focused on the chess game of divorce proceedings that I hadn't stopped to process the emotional reality of what was happening. Angry, I said finally. Not hurt anymore, just angry. She didn't just cheat on me or ask for a divorce. She tried to break me down psychologically, make me think I was losing my mind. That's not something you do to someone you ever loved. No, it's not. And her friends? They went along with it because they thought it was funny. They thought I was weak and stupid and deserved to be manipulated. Their mistake. I squeezed her hand. The weird thing is, I'm almost grateful. If Callie had been honest about wanting a divorce, I would have been devastated. I would have spent months trying to figure out what I did wrong, how I could have been a better husband. Instead, she showed me exactly who she really is. And who is that? Someone I never should have married in the first place. We spent the afternoon walking around downtown, talking about everything except my divorce. Janine had a way of making me forget about the legal drama and just enjoy the moment. We browsed bookstores, had coffee at a sidewalk cafe, and watched street musicians in the park. Around 5, my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. After the 4th call, I finally answered. Jamie, thank God. It was Vera, Callie's friend from the brunch squad. I've been trying to reach you all day. What do you want, Vera? I need to talk to you about Callie, about everything that's been happening. Can we meet somewhere? I don't think that's a good idea. Please, it's important. I have information you need to hear. Janine raised an eyebrow. I covered the phone and whispered, Another one jumping ship. Where do you want to meet? I asked Vera. There's a coffee shop on Elm Street called The Grind. Can you be there in an hour? Fine. 1 hour. The Grind was a hipster coffee place with exposed brick walls and baristas who took their latte art very seriously. Vera was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a cup of something that looked like it had cost more than most people's lunch. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. What's this about, Vera? It's about Heather and what she's been doing to all of us. What do you mean? Vera pulled out her phone and opened a voice recording app. I recorded a conversation I had with Heather yesterday after she got back from her deposition. I think you need to hear it. She hit play. The audio quality was poor, but I could clearly hear two female voices having a heated argument. Told them everything, didn't you? That was Callie's voice. I told them what I had to tell them to avoid going to prison. Heather's voice, defensive and angry. You were supposed to be my friend. I am your friend. That's why I'm telling you to cut your losses and settle this thing before it gets worse. Worse? How could it get worse? Because your husband isn't the pushover you thought he was. He's been playing chess while you've been playing checkers, and now you're screwed. This was your idea. The invisible thing, the asset hiding, all of it. My idea was to help you get a better settlement. Your idea was to turn it into some kind of psychological torture campaign. There's a difference. So now it's my fault. It's your fault that you married a man you didn't bother to really know. It's your fault that you underestimated him, and it's your fault that you're probably going to lose everything because you got greedy. The recording ended. Vera looked at me with exhausted eyes. There's more, she said. Hours of it. Heather's been recording conversations with all of us for weeks, probably as insurance in case things went bad. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm tired of being manipulated by Heather, by Kaylee, by all of it. She rubbed her temples like she had a headache. Do you know what Heather told me yesterday? She said that if anyone asks, I'm supposed to say that you were emotionally abusive during your marriage, that you controlled Callie's finances and isolated her from her friends. That's not true. I know it's not true. I've known you and Callie for 3 years. You were a good husband. Maybe not perfect, but good. You supported her career. You were patient with her moods. You even put up with her awful mother. Then why would you lie about it? Because Heather said if I didn't, she'd make sure everyone knew about my DUI last year. The one I managed to keep quiet because my dad knows the right people. I stared at her. She's blackmailing you. She's blackmailing all of us. Marcy's got gambling debts that Heather helped her hide from her husband. Callie's got the affair with Trent, plus all the asset concealment. Heather's been collecting leverage on everyone in our group for years. Why? Control, power. I don't know. Maybe she's just a sociopath. Vera looked up at me. The point is, I'm done. I'm not lying for her anymore, and I'm not letting her destroy my life to protect Callie's. She pulled a flash drive out of her purse and slid it across the table. Everything's on there. Recordings, text messages, emails, enough to show that Heather orchestrated most of this mess and manipulated the rest of us into going along with it. I picked up the flash drive. What do you want in return? Nothing. Just when this all comes out, remember that some of us were victims too. That evening, I met Rebecca at her office to review Vera's evidence. We spent 3 hours going through recordings, text messages, and emails that painted a picture of psychological manipulation that went far beyond what we'd already uncovered. This is incredible, Rebecca said, scrolling through a series of text messages where Heather coached Callie on how to gaslight me more effectively. Your wife's friend is a genuine sociopath. What does this mean for the case? It means we're not just dealing with a cheating spouse anymore. We're dealing with a conspiracy that involves fraud, blackmail, and systematic psychological abuse. The district attorney is going to be very interested in this. And Kaylee? Rebecca looked up from the documents with something that might have been pity. Your wife is going to prison, Jaime. Maybe not for long, but she's going to do time. I should have felt satisfaction at that moment. After weeks of being manipulated and gaslighted, justice was finally within reach. But instead, I felt something closer to sadness. Not for Callie, who had made her choices, but for the waste of it all. The years we'd spent together, the life we could have had if she'd been a different person. When do we file the criminal complaint? I asked.
Monday morning, and Jamie. Yeah, you might want to prepare yourself.
When this hits the news, it's going to be a circus. I thought about Callie's Instagram posts, her carefully curated image of success and happiness, about Heather's PR firm and her obsession with appearances, about all the people who thought they knew us as a couple. Let it be a circus, I said. It's time for everyone to see who they really are. The story broke on Wednesday morning, courtesy of a reporter from the Hartford Courant who had been following white-collar crime cases. The headline read, "Local HR Director Charged with Fraud in Divorce Scheme." By noon, it was trending on local social media. By evening, it had been picked up by regional news outlets. The story had everything journalists loved: wealthy suburbanites, psychological manipulation, hidden assets, and a revenge plot that had backfired spectacularly. I was at my new office when Rebecca called with an update. "The district attorney filed charges this morning," she said. "Your wife and Heather are both looking at felony fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering charges. The DA's office is calling it one of the most sophisticated divorce fraud schemes they've seen." "What about the civil case?" "Judge Martinez reviewed our evidence yesterday. He's awarding you 75% of all marital assets, plus attorney's fees, plus punitive damages for the psychological manipulation. Your wife is going to walk away from this marriage with almost nothing." I should have felt victorious, but mostly I felt tired. When does she go to trial? Probably not for 6 months, but her attorney called this morning wanting to discuss a plea deal. Apparently, she's finally ready to admit that trying to manipulate you was a mistake. That afternoon, I drove past our old house for the first time since I'd moved out. There was a for sale sign in the front yard, and Callie's Lexus was nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Daly was in her garden, and she waved when she saw me. "Jamie," she called out. "I've been reading about you in the paper. Good for you standing up for yourself like that." I pulled over and walked to her fence. "How's the neighborhood been? Quiet since your wife moved out. She's staying with her mother now, I heard. The house has been empty for a week. Any offers on it?" "Oh, honey. Nobody's going to buy that place now. Not with all the publicity. People don't want to live in a house that was in the news for fraud." I looked at the house where I'd spent 6 years of my life trying to feel some kind of nostalgia or regret. Instead, all I felt was relief that I'd never have to pretend to be happy there again. That evening, Janine and I had dinner at a restaurant downtown. It was the same place where I'd first told her about Callie's manipulation games, but everything felt different now. The legal drama was essentially over. The criminal charges had been filed, and I was finally free to think about what came next. "So, what's the plan now?" Janine asked over dessert. "Besides counting your money and enjoying your vindication." "I don't know. I've been so focused on the divorce that I haven't thought much about the future. Maybe it's time to start." She was right. For the first time in months, I could make plans that didn't revolve around legal strategy or revenge plots. I could think about what I actually wanted my life to look like. "I was thinking about taking a vacation," I said, "somewhere warm with beaches and drinks that come with little umbrellas." "Sounds perfect. When do we leave?" The casual way she said "we" made me smile. "You want to come with me, honey? After everything we've been through together, I'm not letting you out of my sight. Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually relax instead of spending the whole time checking legal documents." We were walking back to my truck when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Hartford. Jamie. The voice was barely a whisper. "It's Callie." I stopped walking. Janine looked at me with concern. "What do you want, Callie?" "I need to see you. To talk to you, please." "I don't think that's a good idea. You're facing criminal charges and my lawyer—" "Please." Her voice broke. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need to explain. I need you to understand why I did what I did." I looked at Janine, who shrugged. "Your call?" she mouthed. "Where?" I asked. "The park where we used to walk Murphy. Can you meet me there in an hour?"
Riverside Park was almost empty at 9 on a Wednesday night. I found Callie sitting on a bench near the pond where we used to bring our old dog before he died 2 years ago. She looked terrible, thin, pale, wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "Thank you for coming," she said without looking at me. "You've got 5 minutes. I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a terrible person, and maybe I am." She finally looked up, and I could see that she'd been crying. "But I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" "I don't know. I was angry and hurt. And Heather kept telling me that you didn't appreciate me, that you were taking me for granted. She said the invisible treatment would make you realize how much you needed me, so you decided to gaslight me for 2 weeks. I thought if I made you feel like you were losing me, you'd fight for me. You'd show me that you cared." I stared at her. "You thought psychological manipulation would make me love you more?" "It sounds insane when you say it like that." "It is insane. And it's not the worst thing you did." "You cheated on me, Callie, for months. You stole money from our joint accounts. You tried to hide assets so you could screw me over in the divorce." "I know." Her voice was barely audible. "I know I did terrible things, but I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of being alone, of starting over, of admitting that our marriage was over." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Heather said, "If I was smart about it, I could get enough money in the divorce to start fresh." She said you'd never figure it out because you trusted me too much. She was right about one thing. I did trust you too much. "Jamie, I'm going to prison. My lawyer says I'll probably get 2 years, maybe 3. I'll lose my job, my reputation, everything. And for what? For money I'll never see and a boyfriend who won't even return my calls now that the story is in the news." I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity, but it died quickly. "What do you want from me, Callie? Forgiveness? Sympathy?" "I want you to know that I loved you. Maybe not the way I should have, maybe not enough, but I did love you. And I'm sorry I threw it all away for something so stupid."
You didn't throw it away for something stupid. You threw it away because you thought I was weak and you could manipulate me. The only stupid thing was underestimating me. She nodded, tears streaming down her face.
"I know. And now I've lost everything."
"And you? You're better off without me."
"Yeah, I am."
It was harsh, but it was true. Looking at her now, I couldn't remember what I'd ever seen in her. The woman I'd married had been confident, ambitious, and beautiful. This woman was broken, desperate, and pathetic.
"Will you ever forgive me?"
she asked. "I don't know. Maybe someday, but not today." I stood up to leave.
"Kaylee?"
"Yeah, next time you want to make someone invisible, make sure they can't see you coming." I walked back to my truck, where Janine was waiting with coffee and a sympathetic smile.
"How was it?"
she asked. Pathetic. She wanted me to feel sorry for her. Do you? A little, but not enough to matter. We drove back to my apartment in comfortable silence. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I could finally close the book on my marriage and start writing the next chapter of my life. 3 months later, Callie pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Heather got 2 years for racketeering and was disbarred from practicing public relations in Connecticut. Trent moved to Florida and changed careers. Marcy and Vera testified for the prosecution and received probation. The last I heard, they weren't speaking to each other. The house sold eventually at a significant loss due to all the negative publicity. I didn't care. I used my share of the proceeds to buy a small cabin on a lake in New Hampshire, where Janine and I spend weekends fishing and pretending to be normal people. My consulting business is thriving. It turns out that being the guy who outsmarted a sophisticated fraud scheme is excellent marketing in the cybersecurity world. Clients trust me to protect them from people who want to make them invisible. And Janine. She quit Murphy's and opened her own restaurant, a small place with good food, honest drinks, and a strict policy against serving people who think they're better than everyone else. Sometimes I think about the invisible man I used to be, the guy who let himself be manipulated and gaslighted because he trusted the wrong person. That man is gone now, replaced by someone who sees clearly and strikes back when necessary. Callie wanted to make me disappear. Instead, she made me visible in ways she never could have imagined. And I'm never going invisible.